Buckle up, folks, because we're about to dive headfirst into the wacky, wild world of the Slovak Judiciary. This ain't your grandpa's courtroom drama, it's more like a twisted sitcom written by Kafka after one too many shots of Slivovica. Justice? Oh, that's served here, but it comes with a side of political maneuvering and a hefty dollop of who you know. Think of it as a grand theatre of the absurd where the rule of law gets left at the coat check. The actors? They're just as surprised by the plot twists as the audience. The script? Let's just say it was scribbled on a napkin by someone who'd rather be at a football game. And don't even get me started on the costumes. Those black robes hide a multitude of sins. So grab your popcorn, folks, because this is one show you won't want to miss. It's a tragicomedy for the ages where the punchline is often the state of the nation. And trust me, you'll be laughing to keep from crying. Let's talk about the stars of our show, the honourable, the esteemed, well, let's just say judges for now. In theory, these robed figures should be the guardians of justice, right? Upholding the law, ensuring fairness, all that jazz? Yeah, not so much in Slovakia. Here they're more like gatekeepers, deciding who gets a taste of justice and who gets shown the door. Forget Lady Justice with her blindfold. These judges seem to have a pretty clear view of who butters their bread. Independent, please? They make a mockery of the very concept. It's enough to make you wonder if they hand out law degrees with a side of how to play the system manuals. And don't even get me started on some of the characters who've donned those robes. We're talking talking conflicts of interest, people who make a mockery of the very idea of impartiality. Now, you might be thinking, surely there's some kind of script they follow, some semblance of order in this judicial circus. Well, there is, sort of. It's called the Slovak Legal Code, but it's less of a binding document and more of a loose set of suggestions, open to interpretation, manipulation, and the occasional rewrite. And when it comes to reinterpreting the rules, no one does it quite like the Slovak Judiciary. They've got more loopholes than a lace doily and more tricks up their sleeves than a magician at a children's birthday party. Justice? Oh, that's in there somewhere, buried under layers of legal gymnastics and political maneuvering. It's like watching a game of legal limbo. How low can you go before the whole system collapses under the weight of its own absurdity? And trust me, they're flexible, these legal contortionists. They can bend the rules further than you'd think humanly possible. The Slovak Judiciary, where the casting director seems to have a penchant for the ethically challenged and the professionally questionable. It's like a reunion of villains from a Dickens novel, all vying for a chance to dispense their own unique brand of justice. You've got your career climbers, more interested in pleasing their political patrons than serving the law. Then there are the ideologues, twisting legal precedents to fit their narrow worldview. And let's not forget the downright incompetent, bumbling their way through cases like toddlers playing dress-up in their parents' clothes. Together, they form a rogues gallery of legal eagles, circling the halls of justice like vultures over a carcass. And just when you think it can't get any worse, some bright spark decides to wheel out the heavy hitters, the judges with more baggage than a discount airline. These are the folks who make a mockery of impartiality, who see legal principles as mere suggestions, and whose interpretation of the law is about as consistent as the weather in the Tatra Mountains. But wait, the real show begins when these legal luminaries actually try to do their jobs. Buckle up, folks, because it's about to get messy. We're talking delays, procedural errors, and enough legal wrangling to make your head spin. It's like watching a symphony orchestra where everyone's playing a different tune, and the conductor's just wandered off for a beer. Cases drag on for years, bogged down in a quagmire of bureaucracy and incompetence. Witnesses disappear, evidence goes missing, and the wheels of justice grind to a halt. And through it all, the judges preside over the chaos with an air of detached indifference. It's like they're watching a particularly dull game of chess, waiting for someone else to make a move. The accused? They're just pawns in this bizarre game, their fates hanging in the balance while the legal system lumbers along at a snail's pace. And as for the victims, well, they're often left feeling like they're the ones on trial. forced to relive their trauma over and over again, while the system fails to deliver any semblance of justice. So there you have it, folks, the Slovak Judiciary, a bewildering spectacle of incompetence, political manoeuvring and legal gymnastics. It's enough to make you want to reach for a stiff drink and a blindfold of your own. But hold on a minute, before you head for the exits in disgust, let's take a moment to appreciate the sheer absurdity of it all. Because, let's face it, if you're not laughing, you're crying. And sometimes, laughter is the only way to cope with the sheer lunacy of it all. So grab another beer, settle back in your seat and get ready for Act 2, because this show's far from over. In the next act, we'll delve deeper into the twisted world of Slovak justice, exploring the political machinations that keep the system running. Or should I say, limping along. We'll meet the puppet masters, pulling the strings, and expose the legal loopholes that allow the guilty to walk free. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. Remember those shadowy figures lurking in the wings, the ones pulling the strings of our esteemed judges? Let's shine a spotlight on these puppet masters because they're the ones calling the shots in this judicial circus. We're talking politicians, oligarchs, and those with pockets deep enough to make a judge's gavel tremble. These are the folks who view the judiciary as their personal playground, where laws are mere suggestions and justice is a commodity to be bought and sold. They hand-pick judges like they're choosing appetizers, looking for ones with a taste for power and a flexible moral compass. And once they've got their favorites in place, well, let's just say those judges suddenly develop a knack for seeing things their way. It's enough to make you wonder who really writes the verdicts in this country. The judges in their fancy robes or the guys in the back room with briefcases full of cash and compromising photos. It's enough to make you wonder if those gavels are hollow, echoing with the whispers of powerful voices. Now let's talk about everyone's favorite legal loophole, the one that lets the guilty laugh their way to the bank, while justice takes a long, hard look in the mirror. I'm talking about paragraph 363, the legal equivalent of a get-out-of-jail-free card, but only if you're rich, powerful, or well-connected. For everyone else, well, let's just say the deck is stacked against you. This little gem of Slovak law allows the general prosecutor to toss out cases like a bad hand of poker, regardless of what those pesky judges have to say about it. It's like giving a toddler a whistle and then wondering why your ears are ringing. And the worst part? They try to sell it as a way to prevent prosecutorial overreach. Yeah, right. It's about as effective as a screen door on a submarine. This legal loophole has been used to shield the corrupt, silence dissent, and make a mockery of the very concept of judicial independence. It's a slap in the face to anyone who believes in the rule of law, a stark reminder that in Slovakia, justice is often a matter of who you know, not what you did. But the real entertainment begins when these judicial shenanigans spill out into the public eye, when the cases are so high profile, the corruption so blatant, that even the most jaded observer can't help but stare in disbelief. We're talking trials that make soap operas look tame, legal battles that drag on longer than your average Tolstoy novel, and verdicts that leave you scratching your head and wondering if you've stumbled into an alternate reality. Remember Marion Cochner, the guy who makes Darth Vader look like a choir boy? His trials were a masterclass in how to turn a courtroom into a circus, complete with disappearing witnesses, tampered evidence, and judges who seemed more interested in keeping their jobs than upholding the law. It was a spectacle that would have made Franz Kafka proud, a surreal blend of tragedy and farce that exposed the dark underbelly of Slovak justice. And then there's the Kuciak case, the murder of a journalist and his fiancée that shook Slovakia to its core. This was supposed to be the watershed moment, the trial that finally forced the country to confront its demons and clean up its act. But instead, well, let's just say it's been a masterclass in how not to conduct a murder investigation, a slow-motion train wreck of incompetence, delays and political interference. So there you have it, folks. The Slovak Judiciary, a never-ending carnival of incompetence, corruption and legal shenanigans. It's enough to make you want to grab a beer, find a comfy chair and settle in for the long haul. Because this show's far from over. But don't despair just yet. Because even in the midst of all this absurdity, there's a glimmer of hope. Because as long as there are people willing to shine a light on these injustices, to speak truth to power, and to demand better, there's a chance, however slim, that things might actually change. So stay tuned, folks, because this tragicomedy is about to get a whole lot more interesting. In the next act, we'll explore the fallout from these judicial failures, the erosion of public trust, and the long road to reform. We'll meet the brave souls fighting for change and the forces that stand in their way. It's a story of David versus Goliath, of hope versus despair, and ultimately of the enduring power of the human spirit. Don't miss it. Ah, Marion Cockner, the man who could make a prison jumpsuit look like a bespoke suit. This guy's trials were less about legal proceedings and more about performance art, with Kochner himself as the flamboyant ringmaster. Forget evidence and testimonies. We had disappearing witnesses, tampered phones, and judges who seemed more concerned with their lunch breaks than the blatant manipulation unfolding before their very eyes. It was a spectacle that would have made even the most cynical lawyer blush, a twisted carnival of corruption and arrogance. Kochner, with his smirks and swagger, treated the courtroom like his personal stage, cracking jokes, throwing insults, and generally behaving like he owned the place. And the saddest part? He practically did. The man was a walking, talking indictment of the entire Slovak judicial system. A system so rotten to its core that a man accused of ordering a hit on a journalist could turn his trials into a series of stand-up routines. And the punchline? Justice delayed, justice denied, and Kochner, for a time, walking free. And then there's the case that shook Slovakia to its core, the murder of Jan Kuciak and Martina Kusnerova. This wasn't some petty crime, some backroom deal gone wrong. This was an attack on the very heart of a nation, a brutal reminder that speaking truth to power can have deadly consequences. The nation held its breath, waiting for justice to be served, but justice, it seemed, had other plans. The investigation into their deaths was like watching a snail race uphill, painfully slow, frustratingly predictable, and ultimately deeply unsatisfying. Delays piled up like dirty laundry. Key evidence went missing, and the wheels of justice seemed to be stuck in the mud. The nation watched in horror as the case dragged on, a constant reminder of the failings of their judicial system. The families of the victims waited for answers, for closure, for justice. But justice, it seemed, was in no hurry. In the Slovak judiciary, time seems to operate on a different plane of existence. Years melt away like ice cream on a hot summer day, cases gather dust like forgotten toys in an attic, and the phrase speedy trial takes on a whole new meaning. It's like stepping into a legal time warp, where the laws of physics, logic and common sense cease to apply. Defendants, especially those with friends in high places, use this to their advantage, dragging out proceedings, filing endless appeals and generally running out the clock on justice. And the courts, they're more than happy to play along, bogged down by bureaucracy, inefficiency and a chronic case of too much work, not enough time. It's enough to make you wonder if Einstein had it all wrong. Maybe the real theory of relativity isn't about space and time, but about the Slovak judicial system and its unique ability to stretch both to their breaking point. Justice delayed is justice denied, they say. And in Slovakia, justice is often delayed indefinitely. So here we are, folks, stuck in this tragicomic interlude, watching as the Slovak judiciary stumbles from one crisis to the next. The audience is restless, their patience wearing thin. They've seen enough corruption, enough incompetence, enough delays to last a lifetime. They're demanding a rewrite, a new cast, a director who actually knows what they're doing. The question is, will anyone listen? Will anyone have the guts to stand up and say enough is enough? Or will this farcical production continue with the same tired actors, the same predictable plot lines, and the same unsatisfying ending? Stay tuned, folks, because the final act is still to come. And who knows, maybe, just maybe, this time, justice will prevail. But don't hold your breath. This is Slovakia after all. So there you have it, folks. The Slovak judiciary in all its absurd glory. It's enough to make you laugh, cry, and bang your head against the wall all at the same time. This ain't justice. It's a stand-up routine where the joke's on the citizens. They're stuck in this never-ending loop of legal limbo where the punchline is always the same. Justice delayed, justice denied. The script is tired, the actors are phoning it in, and the audience is walking out. The Slovak people deserve better than this farcical excuse for a legal system. They deserve a judiciary that's actually blind, a system that values fairness over favours, and a government that understands that the rule of law isn't just a suggestion, but hey, at least it's entertaining, right? Because when you're dealing with a system this broken, sometimes laughter is the only defence mechanism you have left. But behind the laughter, there's a growing sense of unease. A feeling that this whole charade is one scandal away from collapsing in on itself. Because here's the thing about this whole judicial circus, it's not actually funny. The consequences of this systemic failure are real and they're devastating. When people lose faith in the justice system, they lose faith in everything. It erodes trust, fuels cynicism, and creates a breeding ground for corruption and impunity. It means victims are denied justice, the guilty walk free, and the powerful continue to operate above the law. It means journalists are afraid to speak truth to power, entrepreneurs are afraid to invest, and ordinary citizens are afraid to raise their voices. It means a nation's potential is held hostage by a system that's supposed to protect it, not strangle it. This isn't just about abstract legal principles, it's about people's lives. It's about the families torn apart by unsolved murders, the whistleblowers silenced by fear, the entrepreneurs driven to bankruptcy by corrupt officials. It's about a nation held back from reaching its full potential by a judiciary that's more interested in self-preservation than justice. But even in the darkest of comedies, there's always a glimmer of hope. The Slovak people are resilient, and they haven't given up on the idea of a just and equitable society. There are brave judges, prosecutors and lawyers who refuse to play the game, who risk their careers and reputations to speak out against corruption and demand accountability. There are journalists and activists who continue to shine a light on the darkest corners of the judiciary, who refuse to let the truth be silenced. And there are ordinary citizens who are fed up with the status quo, who are demanding better from their elected officials and holding them accountable for their actions. The road to reform is long and winding, and there will be setbacks and disappointments along the way. But the seeds of change have been sown, and they're starting to take root. The question is, will those in power nurture those seeds, or will they try to crush them under the weight of their own self-interest? The Slovak judiciary stands at a crossroads. It can continue down the path of farce and dysfunction, becoming a global punchline, a cautionary tale of what happens when justice is for sale. Or it can choose a different path, a path of reform, transparency and accountability. The choice is theirs, but the time for action is now. The audience is restless, their patience wearing thin. They've endured enough bad jokes, enough broken promises, enough empty gestures. They're demanding a rewrite, a new cast, a director who understands that the only punchline they'll accept is one where justice prevails. The show goes on for now, but for how long? The Slovak judiciary has a chance to turn this tragicomedy into a story of redemption. Will they seize it? Or will they let the curtain fall on a nation desperate for a just and equitable future? Only time will tell. Thank you for watching and subscribing to Anulum Insights.